Now let's have a look at the role of reading ability in developing second language reading. In other words, to what extent students' ability in first language can influence their ability in second language. So we'll look at some of the debates in favor of first language and its influence on second language, and we'll look at some of the opposing views. So of course, language proficiency and its importance for second language reading is important, because if the students, we have this argument taking place in the field of second language acquisition, so that if students are good at first language, they are likely to become good at second language reading especially. So it can exert positive influence on students' proficiency in second language reading. And if students are not well in their first language reading, they might be not able to do well in their second language reading. So it's just been seen very closely, like the relationship between reading in first language and reading, its influence on reading in second language, in our context English, of course. So this argument exists with its limitations, and this point of view is a little bit controversial, because some studies suggest that that first language reading can influence second language reading positively, but on the other hand, there is an argument that first language reading is not necessarily influential in terms of developing proficiency in second language reading. So let's have a look at the opposing view, which is reading is of course seen as a function of proficiency in second language. So they argue that it may not be well important, the relationship between first language and second language. It may not be well important at the initial level. It might be helpful when the students have achieved a minimal proficiency in second language. So this is needed, this is required if you want to benefit from first language skills of reading. So as you can see here, Kamil argues that students' language proficiency is more important than first language ability. So what Kamil means is that students' knowledge of vocabulary, their awareness of the syntactic structures or the lexical mass of words, they are more important than their ability in first language. So what Kamil argues is that students need to, if they want to develop proficiency in second language reading, some of the things might be transferable to the second language, but overall it's the students' motivation, it's their linguistic proficiency that can pave the way for second language proficiency. So Elley argues that second language reading, especially students' knowledge about the second language, that's much more important than their ability in first language. So for example, some of the students may be very good in their first language reading, but they may not be well in their second language reading. So this is a bit controversial. So we need to be cautious, careful in terms of making any judgment about the relationship between first language and second language. So you as language teachers, when you are teaching reading skills, you might be thinking of the role of first language reading ability and its influence on second language reading. So when you are considering this element, you need to be cautious that this is very sensitive issue. This is not straightforward, and it may have its implications for second language reading ability. So Elley argues that second language knowledge plays its important role at low levels of proficiency. So on the other hand, the ability in L1 reading that might be influential at higher levels of second language reading proficiency. For example, that might be helpful or useful at, for example, at intermediate level or bachelor's level or even master's level. So this is how we have seen the reading ability in second language reading, which is not straightforward, which may have its influence by students' reading ability in the first language. And some of the skills are transferable. I mean, the skills which students develop in first language reading. In our context, it might be Urdu, or it might be some of the regional languages. So this is how it's not necessarily important that the students, if they are good at Urdu, they can read speedily, they can skim and scan, and it's not necessarily important that they can do the same things while reading in English. What's needed is students' background knowledge, their adequate proficiency in vocabulary, their experiences of prior knowledge, and how they make connections with the existing language.